Welcome to the Roundtable Podcast with me, your host, Mike LeBlanc. Tune in as we have honest and genuine talks about everything real estate and so much more. Let's get to it. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm happy to be joined by Julien LeBlanc. Julien, welcome.
Yeah, excited for this conversation, Monsieur LeBlanc.
Should be fun. So, Julien, we've known each other a long time, but who is Julien LeBlanc? I always start the podcast with that.
That's pretty deep for a first question. Who is Julien LeBlanc? Wow. Well, Julien LeBlanc grew up in New Brunswick. As I say, I live in Ottawa now, Mike, as you know, but my heart's still in New Brunswick. All my formative years, basically left New Brunswick when I was 21 after my undergrad at l'Université de Moncton. Julien LeBlanc is a dad, proud dad, 2 daughters, Naomi and Rowan. Hard to believe, but first year university next year for my oldest. My youngest is in grade 9. Happily married 21 plus years now. My wife, Bridget Mooney's from Ottawa, hence that's why we live in Ottawa. And I'm an entrepreneur coach. I opened my consultancy firm called Blueprint Management Consultants. We opened in 2012 after a very successful and fruitful stint with McCain Foods. And basically, to oversimplify, Mike, is I help people with their business confidence, whether it's strategic confidence, leadership confidence, getting to yes confidence, and then all the other stuff that comes around, what I like to call entrepreneur shit, right? You replace the P with the T because it's not really what people think it is. So I know that's a lot. And I guess more importantly is, you know, I love to compete. I love to challenge myself. I like to always try to figure out ways to be 1% better. I love helping people. I love being part of a community. I love giving back. I love life. I wake up in the morning fired up to see what life has in store, even in this crazy world that we live in. So all of that, that's my 2-minute elevator pitch. So how about that?
That's awesome. Truly, I'm super happy to have you on the podcast because you're from here, from our town here in Dieppe, New Brunswick, and now living your life outside, like you said, in Ottawa. And it's going to be a fun time to just discuss about that perspective and how things have evolved. But let's start, I guess, from the beginning. You grew up here in Dieppe. You played sports and went to pretty much the same school as we all did. How was it growing up here in Dieppe?
It's amazing. Life comes back full circle. So my daughter on the weekend had her boyfriend at the house, and my 2 brothers happened to be at the house as well. So Marcel and Philippe. So we all grew up like you guys, right? Michel, Denis, Mars. And man, it's funny how the stories get exaggerated over time because, of course, we never, ever lost in ball hockey, right? We never lost. No different than I'm sure you never lost on your street, Mike. Right?
Yeah.
It was amazing how it literally felt like yesterday as we were talking about what it was like growing up in Dieppe. And again, all those formative years, it was about going to schools that I know have changed over time, but of course, we went to Mathieu Martin, and it was walking to school, which is very rare. Like, for instance, in Ottawa, you can get that, but it's not as common. And it was just always feeling part of a community. Like, I think of all the people on our street, it almost felt like they were all our uncles and aunts, whether they, had the last name or not. And literally, we went down memory lane last night. Michel, it's funny you asked me that question.
Cool.
And you saw the 3 of us lit up, literally, as we talked about who's doing what, who's still there. Sometimes some of our friends have bought their parents' house or they're on the same street that they grew up. I'm sure we have listeners that are in that boat. To me, if I were to put it in buckets, what Dieppe did for me is complete safety that I could be who I was meant to be. You know what? If I was meant to play on the street till 9:00 at night, I felt safe that I could do that. And my parents felt safe. So you had this built-in kind of safety net. I think there's, being a Acadian is the community keeps you humble. Even if you had an accomplishment, like I remember, Michel, as a tennis player, the first time I won the provincial championships, and man, did I ever think I was on my high horse. It did not take long for the street to let me know, like, listen, dude, you know what? You might have won a tennis tournament, but you're still Petit Julien from La Rue Gaspé. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
So we've got a great win.
Score on me on the breakaway in the ball hockey game.
Exactly. Whether it was Billy Viret, Gilles Babin, all the, again, I've named names, funny enough, probably have listeners that know and remember some of the names that I just dropped there. But so it was the safety it was being part of a community that always kept you humble and in check in a good way. You're never too big for what you've accomplished. And then the last thing is, it was this sense of it really was one big extended family. Like, it's amazing how when I talk to my parents that still live in Dieppe, I always go through you might not do this, Michelle, because you see the people, but I literally, if you talk to my mom, she would say, I know what Julian's going to say. Hey, how's, I, I
So and
don't
so, and yeah,
so and so's parents, and I want to
yeah,
go through a whole list because they had such an impact on me. And in my mind, they never age. So they're still the same age as they
yeah.
were 25 years ago. I guess for me, it was safety, being part of a community, family, um, pride, but yet humbleness, because man, that community was not afraid to put you back on your horse. Like I said, if you got a bit too high.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's funny. I was talking about that this weekend at the hockey rink. Of course, it was a provincials this weekend, so everybody was at the hockey rink talking about the people that working at the rink, and like now. The kids don't really know the people that work at the rink. They don't really talk. But for me, when I was young, just one of those things where living in a smaller city, you knew everybody that worked at the rink and they actually knew you. So even now, if I see a guy, I'm 46 years old, I see the guy, whether it's George or whoever, like you see them and they're like, hey, Mike, how's it going? It's like as if and it might be 20 years, 15 years. I haven't seen him, but all of a sudden you had that bond. So it's funny that some of the things we
Well,
remember when
Mike,
we're
you're
younger.
gonna love this story, and I can't believe you just went there. So about a month ago, my old coach, and he worked in the ranks, Louis Babineau. So I'll make sure that Louis listens to this. Louis had such an impact on me at a young age. Like, I still remember Adam Hockey. Sometimes you have that adult in your life for whatever reason that just believes in you. And he really believed in me. And he almost gave me wings. Probably that I ended up punching way above my weight at that time, because if he thought I could do it, I believed in myself. And so we were going, he's a big Islanders fan. Obviously, I live in Ottawa, and we were playing each other. So here we are going on Facebook. Like, we're talking like 30 plus years later. And he was so proud because he remembers Courtney that won the medals in speed skating always being at the rink. So he said, look, all of us rink attendants, all of us that work for the city almost claimed her as one of ours as well. So it's interesting to say that the relationship that we had with anybody, whether they work for the city, whether they worked at the rink or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, the city now is growing, which is great as well. We're now having services and things that we've never had when we were younger. So that's always great. But with that comes that my kids don't really know the people that work at the rink and so on. And that's okay. I mean, that's just part of the evolution, but it also makes our childhood, I guess, a little unique and different. I think, still living here myself, I just,
Not sure if you got the number directly, but what would be the population now of, let's say, Dieppe? Because I know we're going to talk about Moncton, Riverview, all of it, but like Dieppe, what would be the population?
so the population of Dieppe right now would be around 40,000, so high 30,000, I would say now, but it's growing exponentially. I haven't seen the recent numbers, but there was 10,000 people where we were young.
So that's exactly
Right.
where I was going to age myself. I remember my dad being very involved, municipal politics and so forth. And I remember that day, 10,000 people. And it was like, wow. So at 10,000, you're kind of like the Kevin Bacon, what is it, 7 degrees of separation. In our case, you were probably 1 or 2 degrees of separation from any single person in the city. Well, at 40,000, that it changes a little bit,
Yeah.
obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still funny whether we go to a coffee shop or somewhere around and I'm with my kids and they're like, you know everyone. Like
Yeah.
how, how do you know all these people? It's like, well, I mean, just so where we are and also being so much involved into what we do and you touch so many people, whether it's through real estate or golf or the golf course or what have you, you end up meeting a lot of people through the years. So it still has that little smaller town feel in some instances. I mean, you don't wave as much to every car that go
Right.
by anymore
Well,
when we're
you are
used to.
right, though. But like someone like you, I'm going to make you blush here. But if you think of the impact you and your family have had, because to your point, whether you've had an interaction at the golf course, through hockey. Think of the people you've coached, because it's
Yeah.
not just the kid you're coaching, it's the parents, the grandparents, the uncles, the aunts that come and see you. And sometimes you might not know them, but they know you because they've seen you, like, behind the bench or whatever. And then you think of your kids' activities, and then you think of real estate. Like that quickly takes 40,000 and makes into 400, for instance, at that point.
Yeah, definitely for sure. So that's cool. So in Ottawa, do you still play sports now?
I
Tennis? Are
do,
you still the Ottawa champion now?
yeah. In my own mind, I am. Who's listening to the podcast? Because it depends who's listening to it. Yes, I'm the best player in
We
Ottawa,
can
of
do a
course.
few takes. We can do a few takes.
Look, here's what I would say. Actually, that's a great question. It reminds me of what's so great about towns and cities like Dieppe, Moncton, Shediac is because I felt so part of a community. I really brought that mindset even when I went into big cities. So in Ottawa, for instance, very involved with the Ottawa Sports Council. So I was on the board for 7 years, and it was this whole notion of how do we help
Okay.
all sports. We had a belief, I think you'll love this, Michelle, which was we believe there should only be positive experiences in sport. We're not saying losing or winning. We're saying, hey, if you're a coach, do you have the right infrastructure and tools? If you're an athlete, do you have the right coaching? If you're a parent, do you have the right things you would need to feel safe that your kids have a good environment? If you're the media, do you have access to the great stories that come from amateur sport? So very involved in Ottawa. And it's amazing that in a way, and you've probably heard this, I know you've spent time in Ottawa over the years as well. Ottawa is really a town. It's a bit different than Toronto and
Yeah.
Montreal.
Oh,
We're a
definitely.
million people, but it actually feels like a bigger, greater Moncton in many ways, Michette.
Hmm.
So long answer to say, absolutely. If my kids are in swimming, we get involved in swimming on the volunteer front. Because I have a motto that you're not allowed to complain about the refs, the coaching, the volunteers, unless you put your foot forward. If you put your foot forward and you think someone could do it better, fair game. But if you're just sitting on the sideline and complaining about it, you don't have a right to do that. I believe that more than ever.
I agree with that 110% as well.
Yeah. So all that to say, very, very involved here in Ottawa in multiple things from a community standpoint.
And you play tennis and do you
Yeah.
still play hockey?
So playing tennis, what's fun is now playing with my daughter, and you remember that transition with playing
Yeah.
her full out. So Naomi's 18, very active in tennis. And then I've got a couple of buddies, so play a couple of times. Do you know, Mike, I haven't hit the ice now in 4 years, but I refuse to say I've retired. So my gear is still smelling in the garage, and my wife is still like, where's that gear go? The hope is next year I plan on suiting it up again. I'm not ready to give it up. I'm an avid runner, so Ottawa is a great city to run in, along the canal, all that good stuff. And my 2 daughters are swimmers, so I don't swim, but I love hanging around the pools and supporting in that front as well. Yeah.
Speaking of sports, and this is not on, I didn't have this written down or anything. It's just by talking about it, being around the rinks, um, and talking to a few other people this weekend. What do you feel is because we're seeing definitely a change here, and I'm sure it's around there in sports in terms of what's the parent involvement now in sports and some of the differences of the expectations of you're seeing reports of referees now wanting to not be a referee because of the abuse they're getting verbally or in some cases we've seen physically by parents and also the expectation on their kid now playing 12 months of the year the same sport and you have to commit to a certain sport where I'm kind of not in that realm at all where I still play hockey now, I still play golf now, I still do the sports that I love because I loved them growing up and I give back to those sports now because I love them that much. um do you think the kids are going to grow up loving the sports as much? What do you think about that?
I think there's some great data. So I don't know about you, Mike, but when the Olympics are on, I'm like all in. Like, especially this year, I loved it because I could get up a bit early before the day got going. And
Yeah.
you look at the success Norway's had, and there's a lot of white papers that have done on their success, which is they're basically saying that kids don't even play to win or lose until they're 13, and kids are playing 3 sports. So they've really committed to that. I think we've gone down the hyper specialization that ruins the joy of it. Because if you think of hockey, right? Like, I mean, it's basically a religion here for many of us in some shape or form. And I look at the European model where they really encourage the kids to be dual athletes. I know that living in Ottawa, I look at Daniel Alfredson. If anybody follows hockey, he was kind of one of the hockey legends when I was growing up, and he's assistant coach for the Senators. He's very involved because he's got kids here. So he's coached multiple teams. And he's been upfront with parents to say at 13, 14, 15, if you want to win, then you're in the wrong team. We're going to build skill. We're going to bring joy for sport. We're not going to play systems. Don't play systems when they get in a little bit older. And you know what's funny? Even though he's Alfredson, some parents didn't resonate with that because, my kid's going to go to the big leagues and they're putting all their energy towards their kids winning the Batum AAA or whatever title it might be. So couple of things is I think absolutely like you, Mike, I think we got to be very careful of creating these hyper specialized athletes because that becomes their identity. And then when they get injured or they don't make the team, they probably want to quit the sport and they never come back to it because there's not a lot of joy there. And then secondly, being involved with the Ottawa Sports Council, I bumped into this movement in Australia. And I don't know if you put links here for our listeners or maybe, obviously it's not hard now with AI or Google, just go find it. But there was a whole movement that was developed in Australia. And it was this notion of what's the parent's role in developing athletes. And what the movement was is I love watching you play. Basically, if I'm not the coach, so in your case, it might be a bit different, Mike, because you've coached some of your kids over the years.
Yep. Yep.
For instance, I'm not a swim coach. So my only role with Naomi and Rowan after their meet is, man, I really love watching you try to figure things out, or I love watching you swim. Not, hey, why did you hit the wall a certain way? And then me trying to pretend like I'm adding value, or even worse. And this is what's super interesting. The stat that blew me away was 72% of high performing athletes. So think of anybody that's playing provincial teams or select teams. Drop out age of 13 or 14. So that's the dropout rate. And the number one reason is probably not what our listeners think. It wasn't the sport. It wasn't the coaching. It was the parents, but in a very specific time, the car ride. So the car ride is not a safe space for the kids. So think about this, Mike. So I'm playing for you. You're my coach. You've given me feedback. Maybe I had a bad game. I know it. You've been a bit tougher on me to say, look, Julien, like, you were a bit selfish here or you weren't playing the system, whatever it might be. I get in the car. And if for the listeners, you've all been guilty of this. I teach this and I feel miserably every time because it's hard. But here's how the conversation goes. Tell me something you did well, right? The kid knows. The kid's not stupid. You're setting them up to then say, hey, what were you thinking when you did this? And here's the problem with the kid in the car. They don't have control because you're driving. They're in the back seat typically, or as they get older, maybe in the front seat. They probably don't want to talk about the game because they've been blasted by their coach or they let their teammates down. And here you are, you've got them trapped for 15, 20, 30 minutes. And you're now going to impose yourself as their coach, not as their parents.
Yeah.
Well, tell me how fun that is for a kid. Night in, night out, practice, games. So their insight was create a safe space in the car. The only thing you should say is, hey, I really love watching you figure things out, or I really like your effort level. If they want to talk about it, they'll talk about it. If they don't, there should be no talk about it. Done.
I agree. And sometimes we have it here in New Brunswick where it's like respect in sports for the parents and some of those things. And you need to go through all that. I think there should be some things that is being put out there to say, hey, also, these are the facts that we're seeing that kids are dropping out because of this and this and such. And it's because of that car ride. So be mindful of that when you leave the rink or the tennis court or the pool, whatever the case may be, right?
2 examples. And again, look, this is hard just because we're saying this, and I'm not saying I'm perfect. Like I fail probably every day as a parent of kids.
Yeah,
right?
same. I'm not
right, because
I'm
there's
guilty
lines
of all
that are
the things
very
too.
right. There's lines that are very gray. But I'll give you 2 examples. I did a session for a ski club here, just on the Quebec side, because obviously for those that have been to Ottawa, we border Gatineau, so just across. And we did a session with the kids, and it was skiing with a growth mindset, it was called. But I'll tell you what was very impactful. After the kids left, we did a session called parenting with a growth mindset for the kids. And it was fascinating because what we did is we said, hey, what do you think the kids answered to this question? What do you think the kids want from you as parents? And the parents had some aha moments because we even asked one question, Mike. I said, hey, is anybody here in the room the actual official coach of your kid as a ski coach? And there was only one hand that went up. So, the other 95 hands, no one went up. And then my next question was this. So if you're not the coach, is there anyone here that's actually coached their kids recently? And then I swear, you should have seen the wives look at the husbands look at the wives, because it was very clear who was coaching. And I said, so imagine that poor kid that's been working on a turn with their coach, and then now you're conflicting that advice because you saw one bad turn. And by the way, you never even really skied, or even if you skied, that kid is completely screwed at that point. So that's one thing we've been doing. I did the similar one with swimmers, and I love doing the parenting with a growth mindset. So it's not just a kid, it's what's your role? What questions can you ask? How can you
Mhm.
support? How can you get out of the way? How can you create an environment where the kid feels that there's psychological safety, that they can be vulnerable, they can be themselves, they can talk about it or not talk about it, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah.
Sport teaches you so much, and that's what I love about living here and grow up here. And also, that's mainly the only reason I do coach is to have an impact, not on my kids, but on a lot of kids, right? Not just my kids. Like, I look at it, I have a responsibility for when I was coaching high school to these 20 kids that are there all the time. If my son or both my sons are a part of that team, they're just part of the 20. It's my responsibilities through all these kids to make sure that they have a safe space and able to discuss about anything they want if something is not going right into whatever. So that's what I find sport, and I'm hopeful that we're gonna keep that into sports and not really hyper. Because now with social media, I feel we're pushing. Oh, we won this, we won that. We're here, we're there. We did this. My kid did that. And when they don't win, then nothing is posted or nothing is sent or nothing is, oh, they fought well. They just lost in the semifinals, but had a good time. Like, none of that. Like, it's more like, hey, look at the accolades. Look at this. It's either you win or don't win, which you learn a lot more through failures than you do through successes. So,
Well, I'll tell you, we had a quote at the cottage. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And it was this notion of just fall in love with the process, fall in love with the journey. Because even when you hoist the cup, it's a very fleeting moment. What you look back on is, like, as swimmers, you talk about, I can't believe we went to practice at 5 a.m. when there was a blizzard out there. You kind of don't talk about the meet where you won a ribbon or a medal. And
yeah.
and I agree. Actually, that is a good call out, that I think as parents sometimes, even when we don't get the result, that's when we should post to say, what a great weekend, what a great event. And you know what? Our kids didn't get the result, but man, they came together, because we don't see enough of that on Facebook and Insta. I agree, actually, Michelle, from
Yeah.
that standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just puts that you have to be part of this team or that team or,
The
yeah.
one thing I'd like to add, though,
Yeah.
is what's
Yeah. Go
interesting.
ahead.
My wife works at the National Arts Center in Ottawa. And so it's not something I grew up around, like theater and the arts. So we use the word sports, but replace sports with, if you think of all the activities in Dieppe Mountain, like being part of a community, whether it's, you're putting on a show for people, whether you're part of a band, it's all the same principles apply. I think replace the hockey puck with, I don't know, the saxophone, the same lessons would apply.
Or a dance troupe
Or dance
or,
troupe. Yes, yes. Yeah,
whatever. Like, it could be anything.
yeah, yeah.
No, no, I agree. All right. Well, switching gears here and maybe diving more into the work side of things. So, your current job, you touched a bit on it. What's your day like? What do you do on a daily basis? What kind of team do you have, and what do you do now?
Yeah, so I think maybe to get to this place, I'll just kind of maybe tell you and our listeners a bit about the journey to get to this place, and that'll explain what I do on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. So my career, so basically grew up in New Brunswick, never let the tennis dream go, even though I wasn't good enough to play pro, but I wanted to experience what would it be like being in an environment around the best, like world class. So I moved to Florida for a couple of years. I lived in Boca Raton, Delray Beach, and I'd play a few tournaments, but really I was there as a coach. And I did that for 2 years, had some problems with my working visa, as most Canadians at one point do, and then came back to New Brunswick. And while I was back in New Brunswick, a job was posted for a sales rep with McCain Foods, an amazing success story, based in Floresville, New Brunswick, but really an iconic global brand in frozen food. Applied for it, got the job, thought I'd won the lottery, a company car, to kind of get to move my first apartment in Dieppe. And did that for 11 months. And then a job opened up in Ottawa, and then the rest is history. So basically with McCain, Michel, what I did is I just said yes to everything. Moved to Ottawa, moved to Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary. The last 4 years at McCain, I was the global director for training and development and strategy. So we would go to countries like China, Russia, to try to bring the McCain way of doing business. And for those 4 years, and I can say this now, I can't believe I was paid to do this, because honestly, I loved it so much. I got to work in 48 countries. Like, how cool is that? Right.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
And it really helped form me who I was as a person. And what I would do while I was there is we would hire people, whether it was the big consultancy firm like McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, or we would hire facilitators, sales trainers, people to help us with negotiation, people to help us with whatever skill it was you needed to succeed. And man, did I ever fall in love with it, because it was almost like replace the tennis ball with leadership. I was coming full circle back to, wow, I get to unleash people. And what I realized at one point in life, I love to play tennis. I probably love to coach more. I love being a director of sales. I like being a coach to the director of sales even more. So what I realized is, I'm in love with this. I could probably stay at McCain and do it a few more years. But what happens with companies like McCain is they want you to do different types of jobs. And this was a stepping stone to another job. And so I decided, look, I'm going to take the leap of faith. And in 2012, I left McCain and I opened this consulting firm called Blueprint Management Consultants. And it was funny because I love McCain still to this day. They're still a client. The day I left, they said, great, we'll just hire you as a trainer. So it's like, 29 years later, in some shape or form, I still have my heart, in Floresville with McCain Foods. So when we opened in 2012, it was myself and my business partner out of Scotland. He had opened Blueprint 20 years before that. So he already had all these relationships with companies like McCain. And
That relationship come about with him.
he was the main person that we used when I was at McCain. So I traveled the world with him.
Okay. So
And
you knew him very well.
yeah. And what I got to see in this space, Mike, is the material was very similar. Like if you do sales training, if you do project management training, if you do storytelling training, there's so much good material, but there's a lot of similarities. Ultimately, the magic is who brings it to life. And I fell in love with Ronnie's approach. And Ronnie had spent half his career as a seller and half his career as a buyer. So he had worked for companies like Danone Yogurt, Coca-Cola, but had worked for retailers like Tesco. So Tesco would be a big retailer like a Loblaws, like a Sobeys. So what I liked about Ronnie's approach was you always look at every deal from all angles. Hey, if you were the buyer, would you say yes to that? If you were the seller, would you say yes to that? If you were investing money, would you say yes to that? And I really, really liked that. So when we opened it and partnered together, we kind of, leveraged everything he had. And then I built it over time. The model is very simple, Mike, is I'm the only full-time person. Everybody on the team is set up as associates. So they have their own projects, they have their own businesses. But some of my teammates will spend 80% of their time with Blueprint. We have Fortune 500 clients. We have 60% of our portfolio is in consumer packaged goods in the food space, but we do a lot of stuff in healthcare. We do a lot of stuff in sports. We do a lot of stuff in insurance, in accounting firms, law firms, so professional services as well. And all that to say, what does a day look like? Well, Like today, I did a coaching session this morning before our call. So it was a one-on-one with a CEO. So I also coach as CEOs and leaders. Here we are on a podcast. I'm going to do a 90-minute session with a colleague this afternoon where we're all going to jump on Zoom with 80 people, and we're actually helping them launch their new product that they're going to pitch to Walmart, Costco, Loblaws, and we're going to role play the objections they're going to face. So what are the things that you're going to face that might not help you get to yes? Like your price is too high, didn't work last time, so that's what we're going to do with them. And then literally at 4 o'clock at the end of the day, I'm going to help someone raise money for a project. And the reason I'm going to do that is when I was at McCain, the one thing I did not like when we hired trainers, facilitators, keynote speakers was the ones that had not been in our shoes. So it was the university professor that was super smart, but it never actually sold something or never
Yeah.
negotiated a deal. And
Yeah.
I promised myself that I would never, ever, ever be in a room or coaching someone unless I could feel their pain. So 30% of my time is I'm also an entrepreneur. And so, for instance, that's why, like at the end of the day today, I'm helping raise money for a project. So if I'm coaching someone on raising money, I'm like, it's hard because I have to do it as well. And I'm probably going to get 45 no's until we get that yes where they raise money. And I know, Mike, outside of real estate as well, you're an entrepreneur, so you can appreciate what I say here.
Definitely. And a couple of things on all that is one, on a McCain story, when you're talking about McCain and being in the global aspect of it, I still remember one time, not sure where we were, but I'm going to say, I think it was in like Athens, like maybe, or Santorini or something like weird like that. We are in a restaurant, Jose and I, and we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, this guy is coming with a little, like a dolly, and up he's coming up on the side steps and coming up. And I look, and it's a box of McCain. And I go, wow, that just got me thinking, like, little New Brunswick, here they are rolling up steps with this Greek guy, uh, and it's going to go in this fryer in Greece, and somebody from Greece is going to eat the Grand Falls and Florenceville potatoes. And it's like, wow, look how far we're going and look how far we've come. But I always thought about, and this is probably like 2006, 7 or 8, like it's a long time ago. So it's not like it's just last year. And I found that to be extremely interesting, and really eye-popping.
Well, listen, I think the pride that we should have, if you think of the Irving family, you think of the McCain family, and I'm going to get this stat wrong, but directionally it's right. Outside of the US, they've got the McCain contract.
Yeah.
Sorry, the McDonald's contract. So just
Yeah.
think about that. There's a McDonald's everywhere in the world. So you're absolutely right. The one thing that gave me so much pride being a New Brunswicker is when I would travel the world and I would see the McCain products. And yes, sometimes you see them in grocery store because that's retail, but they're in restaurants and people just don't know. Like they think they're eating a local fry. And the biggest compliments, this is kind of a funny story. King Charles, now I guess at the time when he was Prince Charles, he thought McCain was a British company because
Wow.
McCain did such a good job and was so entrenched because we had a saying which was drink the local wine. So we might be from New Brunswick, but if we're in Italy, you feel local. We called it glocal. So it was this notion of we're a global
Yeah.
company, we feel
Yeah.
local.
Yeah. Never heard
And
that before.
and if you're in France, same thing. They would say la patate frite, it comes from France. They didn't realize that it was actually a Canadian company. So a lot of pride around what McCain's done. As you can tell, I've got the tattoo and I'm wearing it proudly on my right butt cheek there, Mike.
Another story when you were talking that makes me think somebody's buying or somebody's selling, you need to figure out what it is. Because for me, on my real estate side of things, when I'm selling a home or buying a home, anybody that's selling a home is saying, oh, well, geez, somebody's going to buy this because that house over there sold for this much and my house has this and that. And I'm like, yeah, that's all great, but you need someone to buy that product and you need to put yourself in the buyer's shoes. So if you're a buyer of your home today, are you looking at the things the same way as you are as a seller? And those are two totally different things, especially with homes. You have a lot more emotion because it's your home, your family, your kids grew up there. And part of my job is to coach being a realtor also is a coach where you're coaching your clients. And that's the part I love the most. And that's one of the reasons why I shifted from building houses to just selling houses or selling property or apartments or commercial is I love that part so much. The start of when somebody wants to buy something or when somebody decides they want to sell something, that whole putting people together to buy and sell. And we've talked about this, over the last 30 years when we chat and sit down. We don't get to sit down too much together, but when we do, we talk about we both have that passion about just putting people together that have a joint aha moment and being satisfied. So to go full circle and come back to what you're saying this afternoon, talking to someone about raising money and doing the hard part, it's going to be it's sometimes rewarding, sometimes it's not when it doesn't work, but you learn from not having that person saying yes at that time to eventually there'll be a yes. I just love that part. Anyways, I'm rambling on, but
No, no,
for
no. But
me, yeah, because for me, putting my point of all this is putting people together, having things that are mutually agreed upon, that both sides are super happy about it, whether it's a real estate transaction, a business transaction, somebody wanting to be member at our golf course, they having a great experience. That stuff to me is what I get up in the morning for, and that's why I do what I do.
Well, a couple of things to reflect. I mean, we're on the same page here, and I think I did. I do a lot. I call them we notes, not keynotes, because it's not about me; it's about the audience. So I make it very interactive. So if you think of you go to conferences again for our listeners, you got someone on stage that they bring in that's supposed to be a subject matter expert or passionate about it. I love doing that. And one of my recent we notes, I called it "Getting to Thank You." Because I think a lot of people in selling or even buying, they can get to yes, but can you do it in a way that both sides at the end say, you know what? Thank you. You made me a better buyer or a better seller as a result of the conversations. 1 + 1 should equal 3 when things are well done.
Agreed.
And, and,
Agreed.
and I know that you get lit up around that. And
Yeah, very much.
there's a famous quote from Maya Angelou, the American poet that I love and I think about quite a bit as it relates to selling, buying, having impact, doing what you do, Mike, which is being the connector and trying to get that thing to thank you, which is someone's new home, someone's new dream, someone's new real estate investment. Because as we know, everybody's got different needs as it relates to it. But Maya Angelou's famous quote is this: people will forget what you said. They will never forget how you made them feel.
Hmm.
And that's why when you hear it, people say about, it doesn't feel right or the gut feel. And I think even in real estate, yes, the facts and figures in the spreadsheet should say X, Y, Z, and you might need data. But there's still a moment to say, but it doesn't feel right. Therefore, it's not the right house for me. Or I don't see us growing up here because of, reason ABC or whatever. And it is a feeling. At the end of the day, selling, negotiating, buying, whether it's real estate, whether it's consumer packaged goods, we are selling and creating a feeling. Let's never forget that.
Absolutely. I knew this conversation when I asked you to join me on this podcast would get to that point, and that just gets me so fired up. I love that type of stuff, and I love my city. So anything I touch is mostly on real estate, but anything I can do or make our city better than it was when we grew up, that's really our whole motto. I don't have to be, or we don't have to be the end beneficiary of it. If it's just being part of making the trail system better, years from now, 30 years from now, people will go like, wow, this for them, it's just natural. But if they would have just known how much time and effort that it took for people to have all this land, connect it all, have the vision. I still remember when we built the golf course at the beginning, people saying, what are you guys doing? Nobody's going to ever, buy a lot here. And we're going around the table at the house with my dad, mom, and my two brothers going like, I think people are pay 40 grand for a lot. Like, these lots are 90 by 150. I think but then everybody was coming saying, don't think so. It's like, oh, crap. Well, I think we should. In the end, we decided to do it, and sure, glad we did. And think a lot of people 20 years ago are kicking themselves and not buying the $40,000 lot at that time.
Here's what I've realized with human behavior, human nature, as I become a student of it, as we teach it, as I surround myself with experts in the space, is it's one thing to understand someone's needs, but people don't know what they don't know. So part of it, of trailblazing, part of it is what your family did is you created a need that people didn't realize they had, which was to be part of something. I want to use a word here. I can say this, and I probably wouldn't have used these words when I lived in Dieppe and Moncton because I didn't realize it. Sometimes you need space. So yes, my heart is still in Dieppe, 100%. Physically, I'm in Ottawa, and I love Ottawa, by the way, too. So I'm very proud, as I mentioned, I'm very involved in the city. My parents are still in Dieppe. Some of my best friends are still there. As soon as you say the word Dieppe, you know what word I now use to describe your area that I never would have used is world class. And I don't think people realize it because when you're in it, you take stuff for granted. So let me just play this game. When you built Fox Creek is world class. I remember when you had Stephen Ames play against the Brit, Paul
Casey.
They couldn't believe what you had there. And I remember after, it almost gave us all pride of, yeah, we've got a world class that held up to some of the best players in the world. So world class. You think of the Avenir Center for a junior team. That's as good of a building as anywhere in Canada to go see a junior game. And I would argue like it held up for World Juniors, all of it. Think of even infrastructure like, look at the pool in Dieppe. We live in Ottawa. I would kill for that pool. We don't even have that pool in a world-class city like Ottawa. There's a few coming, but we don't have it today. I look at the Petitcodiac River, and I remember growing up like, oh, the chocolate. Every time I go there now, I can't wait to go for a walk around there. That is world-class. Parley Beach, your Shediac, your cottage country. I mean, I could go on and on. The quality of life that you have over there. We talked about community, sports. And you talk about traffic, but let's be real here. That is not Toronto traffic that you're dealing with. Okay. So what you just described, if someone had a piece of paper living in Toronto, Vancouver, and they said, let me check off a bunch of stuff, knowing that, of course, we can't change the weather in the middle of Feb, and there's always knocks to different places, whether you're in Ottawa, we wish we were in Vancouver sometimes in Feb, and probably people in Vancouver wish they were in Toronto in the middle of summer when they don't get that heat, if that's what you like. But truly, 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 Dieppe, Moncton, Riverview, Shediac, all New Brunswick is world class. And I think that's where we need to change our mindset sometimes. It's not poor us. It's not, I wish we had this. We don't have that. We have that in the province.
I agree 110%. We're 2 or 3 or 4 hours from so many great places. Even if you say New Brunswick, going on Prince Edward Island, like that place in the summertime is just, it's magical. Amazing.
I'll use the word magical. It's magical.
It's magical. And as we always say, my brother Marcel says this all the time. It's like, I just crossed the bridge and all of a sudden all my worries kind of go away and I just feel so differently. It's an hour from home. You get to the bridge, an hour, 15 minutes later, you're on the other side of the bridge and all of a sudden you're in a different place. You have Halifax 2 hours and 30 minutes away, which is incredible. You also have, speaking of world class, where you have Cabot Cliffs and Cabot Links, which is one of the top golf courses in the world. That's 4.5 hours from here, that we kind of take it for granted. That is, oh yeah, but it's no, like the Cabot Trail is probably the nicest street in the world. Like it's crazy how beautiful it is. But would you agree that as being a New Brunswicker and Moncton Riverview resident, I say Greater Moncton because I'm really proud of where we're from, not just Dieppe, but all the tri-community. Do you feel that you being outside, that we tend to be a little shy of where we're from? We don't pat ourselves in the back. And when we travel, I feel like for us, when we were younger, when we would travel, people say, oh, where are you from? Oh, well, you don't know. It's a little place east of Boston. It's like, well, I mean, we should be a little prouder of where we're from. So would you agree to that?
Yeah, so here's what I would say to that. I think our greatest strengths are our greatest weaknesses and vice versa. And I think our greatest strength is our humility and our humbleness, and we're very grounded. And we, like I joke, we ground ourselves really quickly. Someone has success, it's like, don't get too big for your boots, right? So
dominant, no.
Yes, dominant. So I think that's really good. And I think there's an opportunity to get a bit better with her storytelling because I think, like, the one thing PI did really well, and look, I love PI. I think we've got gems in New Brunswick that are
Absolutely.
Their marketing got really good in the last few years, though. I must say, as someone living in Ottawa, there was a campaign in downtown Montreal where they had lobster traps and stuff, and I was like,
Uh,
yes, finally,
yes.
we're letting
Yeah.
the world know because it's so
Yeah.
accessible with all the flights coming in, and we've got a great airport, obviously in Greater Moncton. So yes, I hope we never lose that humility, which I'm not worried. It's too cooked in our DNA, and we got to get. I'm not going to use the word proud because I think we're very proud. We got to get better at storytelling and letting the world know what we have. That I would agree with. Yes.
Yeah, because some of the world class things, I have a few friends in the food space, and now New Brunswick has come out to be more on the food side of things and
Yes.
the lobster and all
Yes.
that stuff. But we have some of the best oysters in the world. Some of our oysters here in New Brunswick are sent across the world to be enjoyed everywhere. You know, even the Miramichi, where the river is world renowned for salmon fishing. We do have so many things to be proud of and to be able to pat our backs and have people come and visit. Yes, it's might be a little boring drive from northern part of New Brunswick up to Moncton, but at the same time, that's also cool where you have so many trees from one section to the other, a lot of moose and deer. I truly love where we are and where we're going. I don't think we'll lose our humility,
No.
but
No.
we also should be proud of how far we've come over the last several years. I think we're just getting started.
And look, I think over the years we've had people that have done a really good job. I look at the impact that Frank McKenna had, and again, it doesn't matter what
Yeah.
your political
Yeah,
stripe.
yeah, yeah.
He's on Bay Street in Toronto, and I can tell you that everything comes back to New Brunswick. There's a pride when he brings people to whether it's the golf tournaments he's hosted. And I think I use him as an example. There's a million others we can use, but just because you leave or you have one foot in, one foot out, like I joke in many ways, I take great pride in being an ambassador for New Brunswick, even though I'm not living there. I do think one point down the road, until the pandemic, because my wife went to St. FX, we never missed a year where we weren't back in New Brunswick for 2 years. Then life shifted a bit. But I see retirement down the road or semi-retirement, there'll be some kind of thing that pulls me back because you tend to follow your heart, and your heart is where you grew up in some shape or form. But
Yeah.
the other thing too, Mike, around the mindset. So let's take business, for instance. What I like about New Brunswick is if you want to be more of a local entrepreneur, you absolutely could, and you can. And there's still that nice feel. But if you have global ambitions like the McCains, think of all the success stories that are coming out now of, well, Dieppe, Moncton, Riverview, that you might be based there and you're having impact all over the country, in the US, overseas. And so that's what I like that maybe wasn't as much there when I grew up. Outside the McCains and the Irving, it was rare for companies. But now, I mean, I'm sure you would have 1,000 stories that I just outlined there, where you can have your cake and eat it too, right? Based in
Definitely.
Moncton, but truly export what you have to the world.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. And around here, like I mean, the success or the luxuries that people would think that are luxuries in terms of people with money or in businesses making headway around, we would have very limited amount of those in New Brunswick, say 50, 60 years ago. But now you're getting these world-class businesses that aren't coming from Toronto. People are setting up here and local entrepreneurs and doing their thing. And it's really, really cool to see. I mean, one of the things that I find very interesting, and we touched on it very briefly, but it's McCain is being one, but the Irvings being another, where they're extremely proud New Brunswickers. Most of their employees are all based here. They give so much. And I know some people sometimes say this and that, but really at the end of the day, they employ a lot of people. They pay a lot of taxes, but also they're super proud of being from here. Their head office for Mr. Irving is just up the road from Fox Creek. It's really fun to have the head office is still here in the Greater
And look,
Moncton area.
I think you need trailblazers. You need people that can show you the way to say, look at what we've been able to do out of a smaller province or a smaller city. And you should think big. If you've got something that you believe in, don't limit yourself to here. And
Yeah.
I look at athletes. Think of the amount of athletes that we're now producing out of New Brunswick, because if you see your next door neighbor that, I don't know, played major junior all use hockey or plays AHL or NHL, then you think you can as well. And that takes time because we didn't have that growing up. It was very rare. I mean, for me, I remember growing up, of course, we had a Rolly Melanson, we had Scott Pellerin, one of my good friends, Scott Fraser. There was a few, but now the stories are just more and more. Imagine the impact that Madame Sarou is going to have on kids. How many Olympians will we have coming out in the next 20 years coming out of New Brunswick?
I agree 110%. You touched on doing keynote speaking or being a keynote speaker. How did that come about? I'm curious because once I turned 40, that's one of the things I put on my list. I feel I have a lot to share. That's one of the things I want to get into is speaking and doing speaking engagements. I put on the list this year what to do in 2026 to do at least 2 speaking engagements for free. I just want, again, if I don't get paid ever to speak, I'm okay with that. I want to go into colleges and help kids and help entrepreneurs in any way, shape, or form I can. That's one of the reasons why I do this podcast. If we can help one person, great. So not to ramble on about me, but how did you come about doing speaking and how do you like it?
Yeah, well, I think it's first of all, I want to respond to what you said. If we impact one person with this conversation, everything I've done in my career as it relates to coaching, helping others is always if I can impact one person with that LinkedIn post, it was worth my time. If I can impact one person going on a podcast, it was worth my time. Because if you can meet that person where they needed to be met at that time, I mean, how cool is that? The reason I got into keynote speaking that I call we notes is because it's a force multiplier. So for instance, at Blueprint, we do one-on-one coaching. We do workshops with groups of 8, 12 people. We do sessions where you might get 20 or 40, but typically a keynote is at a conference, at a university where you get 500, 200, 300. So when you go in these rooms, you say, wow, if I can come in with a topic that's going to help people in the room, that is serious impact. And going way back to if I have friends listening to this from my junior high days at Sacré-Cœur or Mathieu Martin, I always loved presentations. I always did. So that was never foreign to me. But I promised myself that I would never be on a stage until I had enough life experience and things to share. So it's funny you say early 40s, Mike, because I'm 51 now. When I started probably doing we notes would have been, about 8, 9 years ago. And it was a bit accidental. So how it happened is we would do workshops. So I was very comfortable there. Let's say I was doing negotiation training with 12 people. And then one of the participants was like, hey, we're having our national conference. And yes, we've hired a former athlete or we've hired an author, but you're so engaging. You love what you do. Would you consider kind of sharing what you did here, but for a bigger group? So not workshop the thing, but share a couple of story insights. And man, the more I did it, I was like, wow. And where I really knew that I had nailed it is when it was about the audience, not me. So my whole thing was asking a question saying, hey, turn to the person to your right, take a few minutes, talk about that. Then I'd roam around like Geraldo, right, with a mic and say, hey, share. And then I'd respond to it. And I was like, man, there's something there. And I'll tell you what else happened by default because I probably spend now, I look at what I'm going to do the rest of the week because I'm off to Portland, Oregon. Next week, I'm in Savannah, I'm in Charleston, and I'm in Florida, basically as an MC for conferences. So what happened now is I do these we notes, these keynotes, and when someone will say, hey, Julien, could you come and talk about selling with confidence, leading with a growth mindset, getting to thank you, some of these topics that I have, I say, yes, I can. And I would like to put my hand up for another role if you have room for me, is I would love to help introduce all the speakers, connect the dots, and then help the participants reflect on what they're learning. So I've kind of become like the so what guy. So what for you? So what for your business? So what?
Yeah, I love that.
So what for your customers? And then I typically close the whole conference with my we note. Because then, yes, I had a game plan going in. And I can say this because I would say this to all my clients. And by the time we're on day 2 or day 3, and it's my turn to now close the conference, probably 60 to 70% is the same as planned. And the other 30 or 40% is based on what I heard in the room. So it's no longer my we note. It's the audience's we note. Because as you know, you've been to real estate conferences where you thought the conversation was going to be about AI, because obviously we got to talk about AI now. And silently, really, the main topic was about how do we just get good at the old school stuff, the Dale Carnegie stuff, the how to win friends and influence people. So suddenly, if my keynote or my keynote was supposed to be about AI, I'd be missing the mark because the energy in the 2 days, even though that was the speakers, what did everybody want to talk about at the bar or in between the speakers was what's old is new again. Man, we got to get good. We got to disconnect ourselves. We got to go back to community. We got to sell the being part of belonging dream. And so guess what? By the time it gets to me at the end of the conference, of course, the participants are going to love the we note because it's what they wanted to talk about, not what I want to talk about. And so, all that to say, I started probably practicing keynotes when I was in junior high because I really, really loved the presentation. It was the thing that got me amped up. Over time, probably honed my skills a bit as a sales leader, as an entrepreneur. Then when I opened Blueprint, I was getting good at it in smaller venues, but then clients started saying, hey, would you do it in bigger venues? And then I got really bold and confident and said, yes, and I would love to be your MC facilitator. I'd love to help
Nice.
you pull it all together. And so I would say now, Mike, 30% to 40% of my time is we notes and MCing and facilitation.
That's awesome.
Amazing, huh?
Yeah.
How life evolves. I didn't even
Yeah.
know it was a job. I made it into a job. So there you go.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think for me, it definitely is going to be part of what I do moving forward. I love that part of it. I feel I don't have enough to say yet, but when I talk to people about it, they say you have tons to say. And for me, it's all about, because I did have throughout my young years, I've started into a very tough business, which is home building. And I battled with depression and anxiety when I was younger, but over the last 10 years have found a way to deal with it in certain ways. Those are things that I want to share, and things on this podcast throughout the years I will start opening up and talking about it. But that's one of the things I'd love to speak about. Maybe some people see a certain person, say, oh, you got it all figured out. You got it all made. You got this, you got that. You're doing this, you're doing that. Because if you put into that rabbit hole, it can be a little dark there. So I would love to help on young entrepreneurs how to maybe navigate through that kind of stuff and ensuring that they do exercise. First time I went in the gym, I was 30 years old. It's the best thing I've ever done. Those are the things that I'd love to share, because everybody's
Let me give you some
gone through
advice.
it.
Let me go Dr. Phil on you because I've received a lot of advice and I'm not going to use the word fail. I've learned a ton because in order to get to this place, you have to go through this messy middle, right? Like you get excited and then it's going to be messy. All the things you mentioned, like sometimes there's things you can control, some you can't. Our brains are all wired differently. Environment, parents are sick, kids, like all of it. I would give you this advice. I think you would be phenomenal. And by the way, as much as I'm giving you advice, anybody listening, if you've got a passion and you've got a message and you say, hey, I would love to do what you do, Julian, to do some we notes or keynotes. And whether that's in high school, whether that's with college kids, whether that's entrepreneurs, philanthropy, all of it. Here's what I would say. Pick a lane and double down on it. So for instance, one of my favorite books that I think you would love is called The Messy Middle. And it's this journey of entrepreneurship. As we know, for those of you that are watching this versus listening, what I'm going to do with my fingers here is literally this is what the journey looks like. It's not just a straight arrow going forward, right? It's not like I'm going to start, I'm going to succeed. It's going to be ugly. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to question yourself, all of it. So I would say, Michel, if you want to inspire people, be the messy middle guy. I want to help you navigate through the messy middle. I want to share my stories as an athlete, as a parent, as an entrepreneur, as someone that's passionate about real estate. And everything you do is to help people navigate the messy middle, to almost fall in love with it, even when it's dark, right? And if that's your lane, then it's very easy to sell your services. Because if people have a conference and they're like, hey, we need someone not just to come in and pump us up, but give us a real talk, you become that guy. So for me, I would say I've been obsessed with two things since the age of 22. And it's funny, here I am 30 years later and still doubling down on it. I was obsessed with why are there people that are world class? You know, notice I've mentioned that word many times. That's why I literally went to Boca Raton, because that was the tennis hotbed, to try to understand what's different about some of these kids that have made it to Wimbledon versus the kids that didn't. And what I realized, It's not much. It's mindset. It's belief in self. It's taking the leap. It's having the courage to fail. It's thinking bigger. It's all those things. And then the second thing I've been obsessed with is confidence. Wow. There's nothing worse than someone that's arrogant, and there's nothing worse than someone that really has no confidence, because it's hard to do business with them. It's hard to want to be led with them. So literally my book's being launched in the fall. I've been working on it for 8 years. I joke that I started probably at 22 thinking about it, and it's called Confidence is a Choice. I believe you make that choice and then you reverse engineer it. What are the things necessary to be confident? Well, you're going to need vulnerability, a good coach, a good team, good partners, good support at home, good tools, practice, process, mindset. Everybody can be confident. I'm not saying that I can decide tomorrow I want to be, I don't know, Tony Robbins. I can become a better speaker if I make that decisions as a confident. Pick your lane. Like for me, my lane, if you talk to any of my clients, oh, you want a confidence boost? You bring in Julien. You want energy? You bring in Julien. You want someone that he's not the expert at business, but he's around experts. Therefore, he can help you unpack certain things. So there you go. There's my masterclass and my gift to you, Mike, and hopefully to our listeners. And by the way, over
Yeah.
here, next time I'm in New Brunswick, I'll tell you about the 100 failures. Okay. So this was just one good example of landing on the dream, which is I started and full circle now. I get to do this and I get paid to do this.
That's great. And I appreciate that. And I love the messy middle like passion.
And
For
I know
me
it
is
is.
to,
I know it is. I
yeah,
know it is.
get people together, how to make somebody, if they're not feeling well, feel better. I found throughout the years, one of the things that changed my life is that I became vulnerable. I became vulnerable and being honest about what I went through. Why am I who I am today? And I find a lot of times where people would kind of like the Facebook and Instagram kind of thing of the world now, where people only want to post when on vacation, and others are looking at that, my God, that person must be so lucky they're always on vacation. Well, no, they're probably not posting when they're just doing their groceries or sitting at home on their couch alone. Or
I'm going to share this because everybody here has that story, and it's probably you and your neighbor. So the other day, it's this time of year. If you're Canadians and you've got a little bit of money or a credit card or something, you try to go south somewhere. I guess it's a rite of passage. That's what we do. Whether it's Florida, whether it's Dominican, Cuba, maybe Cuba not as much right now, unfortunately. But anyways, and I love this. I saw their picture as a family on Instagram, but what it didn't show is what I also saw 10 minutes before, as they were having the biggest fight I think I've ever heard that family. As they were getting in the car, I saw the picture and I almost joked and almost commented, I'd like to see the picture from 10 minutes ago, because that was not what was taking place there. Right? So,
oh man, yeah,
I mean,
that's so true. For me, it's trying to show those sides and trying to be vulnerable that shit does happen, and there's stuff that happens throughout your time and throughout your life or throughout your day that is not exactly how you maybe want it to be. But how do you come out of it? How do you change that? How do you take that and, like you said earlier, you either win or you learn, right? Like
but honestly, Mike, you're passionate about. And again, it's you and I talking, but I put myself in any listener that's decided to invest time in their own journey and trying to think things through and hopefully entertain a little bit by this conversation. If we gave them one nugget, it was worth their time and it was worth this conversation. But like for you, Mike, become the messy middle guy. It's still a balance. There has to be positivity, and then you got to go dark a bit. And that is the human experience. And, I'll share something. How old are you, Mike? Did you say 40?
46.
46.
Mhm.
So I'll give you a lesson, because I know you have listeners. We're talking real estate, we're talking life, community, sports, high performance, whatever. I was involved in a project during the pandemic, and it was to help the University of Ottawa raise money for an advanced medical research center that's world class. So we were looking to raise a lot of money. So we helped build a case for support. And part of this journey is interviewing all these alumnus from the University of Ottawa that have been extremely successful. So we're talking like billionaire successful. It's during the pandemic. Everybody, as you remember, I don't want to go back to that moment in time. Although I actually and I can say that now. There was a lot of things that I think was really good about that moment in time as well. It's just how you experienced it. What happened is I got to speed date with all these successful people. And as you know, success means different thing, right? Sometimes it's monetary, sometimes it's parenting, sometimes it's how you give back, whatever. There's one conversation that really struck a chord with me. The gentleman said, I could see his background. It looked beautiful, the setting. And I said, what a great spot you have. And he was in the Muskokas. So for our listeners, it's kind of like cottage country outside of Toronto. If you don't know where it is, it's where the rich and famous, let's call it, from the Toronto region play. And he said, Julien, he goes, yeah, very proud of what I've done here. I mean, this guy had tremendous success in his career financially. And then he took his iPad and he kind of showed me a couple of cottages around the lake. This is interesting. He said, at 57 years old, I was bankrupt. At 57. At 61, I was a billionaire. So in 4 years, he said, I was never bankrupt spiritually, intellectually. It's just financially, had a couple of bad moves, but I kept on moving forward and forward. And he said, here's the dirty secret that we don't talk about. Most of those cottages here that you're looking at, their fortune was made between the ages of 61 and 75. It's not all the Google story and the 27-year-old Bitcoin, that's got the super yacht, whether they own it or whether it's an Instagram yacht, as we all know. It was a message for me that was important. If you're going to be the messy middle guy, if any of our listeners is going to be that girl, that guy, that person, it's going to be messy before you get to that place. And it's going to be messier for a longer period of time than you think. And and for me, I think about that a lot because even at 51, I have a lot of startups and I've never been more excited for the next 25, 30 years because I think the impact you can have as you're in the back half, playing the back nine of your career, there you go, let's use a golf analogy.
Yeah.
Is 10x what you can do in the first half. And I think that's where society has to rewire a bit because we have these milestones, top 40 under 40, top 30, like, who cares? It's all about the journey and it's all about what you can accumulate along the way. And accumulate to me is knowledge, relationships, connections. And that's just to double down on your messy middle. I think if that's your passion, I think you make that your passion for the next 25 years. You study it, you read about it, you talk to people about it, you speak about it, you maybe create a business about it, you consult about it, you do all of it. Oh, and real estate, it's a messy middle. Like, how many places do you have to show people before they find their dream spot? Honestly, it's comical almost sometimes, right?
It's funny. And even the worst is that I'm a property manager as well, right? So that is really a messy middle where I remember I had an assistant and she was like, oh my God, like, how do you do this? You get up in the morning, you don't, all of a sudden you get a call at 7 a.m. about this and at 8. I'm like, that's awesome. This is what I like. For me, it was always so messy. Like, it's always been messy. I love it there. However, there's some parts of the messiness that you can't stay in there too long in terms of mental state. For me, being in it and out of it so many times, and now knowing what it is to be out of it and staying out of it, the messy middle part, I really appreciate. I never thought that this conversation would be so insightful for me. I mean, it was mostly about you, but
I think that's
thank
what
you
we
for
do
that.
this. And for anybody else listening, so what's funny, by the way, is when a podcaster is talking to another podcaster, because it's like, who's interviewing you? So now I'm interviewing you. We just flip the tables. But honestly, I think it's about having in life. It's about what's your goal. I'm going to go all I'm on a soapbox here for a minute, but the people that I coach or that I see that are successful or that I partnered with or I've been fortunate to be around, I look at your brother. I mean, Denis, one of my best friends. I look at his success. He has goals and it's messy. Like, people saw what he did to get to that place to have impact, whether it was in hearing health, whether it's in whatever crazy idea he's got next. It is messy, but people don't see the messiness. What they see is just the outcome. And if you're not in love with that messiness, you're never going to get to that outcome. Again, this is me on a soapbox, but I believe that more than ever, Mike.
Totally. And for us, definitely my brother's story is a very good one and so proud of what he's done. For us, it was growing up around that table with my parents being entrepreneurs, and we just got used to the messiness. We just got used to the unknowns and this and that, having it a bit wonky, but having a goal in place, but also not really knowing what's next just became part of us. Like Marcel's the same way, where we love problem solving all the time, and I think that comes a lot from our parents of and
Listen, what
where we
your
grew up and
parents
how we
did,
grew up.
someone's legacy is never really brought to life until, 100 years later or whatever. And you think of your parents, and I remember, and I think there should be a podcast just on literally the origin story of Fox Creek if you haven't done it,
It's
right?
on, it's coming. I
I
wanted to
mean,
wait this summer with
yeah,
the golf being on and
yeah.
stuff. So
No, but if you think about it, I remember the napkins. I remember Denny saying, "Oh, my brother Mars, he's looking at this, and my dad and my mom." And what you guys did, there was a lot of messiness to it. But what you've done is you reshaped a community that in 100 years, there's going to be grandkids and grandkids. And I guarantee you that golf course will still be there in some shape or form, right? Yeah. I mean, look, it's, you know what I love about this conversation, Mike, and for listeners is there was no game plan. It was just having a conversation around multiple topics. And I realized that we've gone left or right. But man, you got me thinking. There's a few things now that,
same.
well,
I wanted to add something that
yeah,
actually comes to mind. And
yeah.
again, I had a bunch of notes. I don't think I've hit like number five. Like
That's a good conversation. There's nothing wrong with that.
that's what I mean. I'm sure once I read them all back,
Yeah,
I think we touched on
yeah,
all of them. But one of the things you talked about is with the guy in the Muskokas that 61 to 75 years old, that's where they made their fortune. There's another masterclass successful story in our neck of the woods is the Tim Hortons story.
yes,
Ron Joyce was a RCMP officer
yes,
until the age of 46
yes.
when he decided to stop being an RCMP officer and decided to get into business. Come to find out, when he died at 86 years old, he was, if not a billionaire, he was very close. I believe he was a billionaire when he sold. Um, so again, another real success story just down the road, Fox Harbor, another great golf course. Had the privilege to play there quite a bit of times. We did a tournament there for 5 years with the IWK where we raised $1 million in 5 years for the ICU unit of the IWK, which I'm super proud to have done that with five of my buddies that we did that a
Amazing.
year.
I didn't know that. That's really
Yeah,
like
like a while ago.
amazing.
And Ron Joyce was there and he was doing large donations at the time as well for our foundation. That's another success story that happened later in life. I think about it all the time where I say, I'm 46 and then all of a sudden you're like, well, geez, you're way, way past and you're at a much different space when he started Tim Hortons and look where he ended up.
If you think about it, that's where sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. Because as long as you do something with these learnings along the way, they're all building blocks towards something that you don't even know exists. And if you think of being an RCMP, think about how many conversations you have to have courage to have. You have to have belief in self. You have to be able to broker
Confidence.
peace, conflict resolution. All these skills replace dealing with maybe the criminal or the person that needs help. They didn't know they did something wrong, whatever it might be. With raising money to create a franchise, it's the same principles. It really is the same leadership principles.
Yeah. In the end, all just human trying to go through it and living and learning. That's one of the things that young kids now need to understand, that with everything that's going on with social media and everything else, it's just everything's just not so rosy all the time for others as well. Whatever you're going through, others have gone through as well. So you need to, I know a lot of, I won't call them students, but athletes that I coach follow me and listen to the podcast. They often comment on what's going on. They follow me on all my stuff, and when I see them, they say, "Oh, I listened to your podcast with so and so. It was super cool." One of the things I will talk to them maybe a bit directly now is that we've all had things that we might look confident now, or we are confident now. There was definitely sometimes we weren't, and some other times that the notion of doing what we're doing, or even sitting here and doing a podcast, might not been there. And it's just that everything you're going through it for a reason, and you're going through it to become better on the other side. And whether you're going through and you're seeing some people maybe going through some good times, well, they'll hit into some low times as well. And it's just the way that the the messy middle kind
It's
of goes.
Michael. See, look, it's coming very naturally now. You're the messy middle guy. I can picture the logo now. But Here, and you know what's funny? If you hear a bit of background noise, I can't make this up. There's literally, I'm in a condo downtown Ottawa, and there's construction. I don't think there's ever had construction here, and I hear like buzzsaws and stuff in the back. So I think,
I don't hear it.
okay, good, because it was unconsciously, I think they knew we were talking about real estate or whatever. So I want to share this is, so I have a podcast. It's called Crave, and it's for the International Food Distributor Association. So you know, for friends listening, it's I get to interview all these world-class leaders, specifically in food distribution. So if you think of like Cisco, Gordon, Bonte Food, you know, all these companies that move the food, I interview the CEOs, and then we bring non-industry leaders. And I want to share something for probably for your kids that are listening to this, because this is important. I interviewed recently a retired admiral from the Navy. This guy could have been the most accomplished person I think I've talked to in terms of like 2 PhDs, led the Navy directly, reported directly into George Bush during the Iraq War. So I'm going to date ourselves, but like we're talking like big
Wow.
guns.
Yeah.
At the end of the conversation, he got emotional. It was interesting. So we're talking about this because we're talking about confidence. And he said, look, Julian, I'm a confident guy and I work at it every day. I have my gratitude journal. I surround myself with people. I question myself every day, but I've chosen confidence. And what he said next was amazing. He goes, if you would have told me 38 years ago that I would be on a podcast talking about my career, I'd have said there's no way that that kid growing up in a poor community, you know, not believing in self.
Yeah.
What was funny is he talked about the podcast, not leading the Navy, not being, you know, chancellor at one of the top universities in the world. I mean, Mike, his body of work was exceptional because he had a fear of public speaking. So he would have never pictured himself doing a podcast. He might have pictured himself in the military. So even when you see someone that you
Yeah.
think on the surface they have it all, no one has it figured out. And I think the day you have it figured out is probably one of your last days on earth, right? It's probably the day that it's time to transition to wherever you're going, whatever your belief system is
Yeah.
after. So it's like
That's so true. And you're like, freak, I think I did it pretty good. I think I'm happy now. Boop.
Well, listen, I got to interview our global CEO of McCain. Unfortunately, Adele has passed away now, but for 4 years, he was our global CEO. So imagine, you know, I mean, this guy was exceptional. I got to travel with him. And just before he retired, we had his retirement party. I asked him, I said, Dale, what advice do you have for me? Because at the time I was in my mid 30s. And I love what he said. He said, Julian, it's all about pace. If you go too fast, you lose people. If you go too slow, you lose people. You just got to figure out the pace of how to move yourself and move others with you. And then he had a twinkle in his eye. The guy is 67. He says, Julian, I think I figured out pace a couple of months ago. So he's retiring at 67. He goes, it is the hardest thing to do. Because again, think of you as a coach. If I push my kids too much, I lose them. If I don't push them off, I lose them. You've been coaching how many years now?
I don't know, 15 years?
I bet in 10 years, you might figure out pace if you're still coaching. You still have not figured out pace, Mike. Like,
Oh, no,
you
not
know
at
what I
all.
mean? Like,
Yeah. And it's funny. It's all depending on what you do and who's around you as well. Again, pace is, you take a hockey season, it's 7 months long. You can't be pushing too hard in September if your end goal is to win a championship.
Well, listen, I think pace, and I'm coming back full circle. Now it got me thinking about this conversation with this admiral. And I love what he also said is, Julian, it's all about strategic patience. So whether you're an athlete, whether you're in the military, whether you're a business leader, whether you're a philanthropist, whether you're a nurse, whether you're a doctor or teacher, is if you have a goal, work the goal, but be patient. There's a reason that people get rewarded when they're patient. Most people bail when they were just on the cusp of finally getting that promotion or raising money, or, you know, they were going to pop out of the messy middle, but they bail because they were tired of being in the messy middle. And you know what? Someone else drives by with whatever prize that they were going to have and
Takes
say,
it.
thank you. They take it because you didn't have patience to see it through. Yeah.
So you were lucky enough to, we're almost at the
But you're
end
going to
here.
edit
But
all of it anyway. So that's why
yeah.
I keep going here. Right? It's all good.
No, it's fine with me too. I think a lot of what we're saying here will resonate with a lot of people on different things. And it's just human, right? It's human interaction that we're having here. And I think it touches everyone. So yeah, I love my podcast to be about real estate or this or that, but mainly it's about I might change the name to something else now.
The messy middle. Or, you know what we're talking about today is humans. And humans need a place to
Yeah.
live. They need a
Yeah.
place to belong. And I've
Yeah.
chosen to focus a lot of the time today around how do we help these humans be better at,
Yeah.
whether it's confidence or whatever. So there you go. So that,
One of my questions here is you've were lucky enough to, through your years, to meet a lot of influential people. If people are watching, quotation marks, whether it be a CEO of a company, now leaders, successful people, whether it be billionaires or multimillionaires, what have you. What would you say that do you find a lot of them have it all figured out now? And the other thing is, what do you find that most of them have in common?
well, I want to use two local heroes that we have that have been in the news quite a bit recently, whether it's the public news or just a story, and a lot of your listeners would know these two individuals. So think of Louis Melançon, Coach Melançon, what he's been able to do. As I joke, he's a 32-year overnight success, right? He's got two of his guys that he worked in the last 2 years on the PGA Tour. He's got the guy that won the qualifying school, and David Alexander. That was the goalie coach for Team Canada. Literally, I mean, he won a Stanley Cup 2019, but here he is. Think about David as a goalie coach. It doesn't get bigger than that. He sent me a picture, and here he is with the three goalies of Team Canada at the Olympics in Cortina. And this is a kid I used to coach tennis. I'm like, David, you've come a long way from the Moncton Tennis Club, my friend. But you know what's amazing with those two guys is very easy. Curiosity. Anybody that knows Louis or David, man, they're curious. You want to talk about them and they flip it really quickly. Like Louis, no, but Mike, tell me
All the
about
time.
this. Always.
Yeah.
David,
Yeah.
same thing. It's never about David. It's always like, but Julian, what do you do with this? What do you think of that? And the second thing is, it's drive. And drive, but consistency beats motivation every day. This is the one thing I wish I would have learned way back studying the greats.
Yeah.
So even
Same.
learning from is
Yeah.
show up every day. Like, for instance, I never used to work out unless I had an hour, because in my mind, you can't get a proper workout for an hour. Now, Michel, if I have 10 minutes in a hotel, I go because I don't want to miss a day, because consistency will beat motivation. And by the way, 10 minutes turns into 20 and 20 turns into an hour typically. So what I've seen with these two guys, do they have self-doubt? You better believe it. Do they sometimes learn? 100%. They're what I would call ultra curious. They would be like curious to another level. Almost like Ted Lasso, if you have any listeners that are listening, where he had that famous quote, be curious, not judgmental. They are curious and not judging it, but trying to learn. And what's funny is both of them were school teachers. So it's interesting if you think David started as a school teacher and Louis studied to be a phys ed, but then kind of quickly realized. So I think they've got that innately built in them, growth mindset, kind of curious. And then it's about just showing up. I look at a Louis still to this day. He's on the range. I mean, I don't know how much he can bench press, but he looked fit. So he takes great pride in himself.
Yeah.
Hey, Jules, what can I read? What can I read? It's just curious. And then it's just showing up. David, I remember being in St. Louis with him. Here he is talking about AI before AI was a thing. Like, he's always one step ahead because he knows that his colleagues that are coaching goalies are talking a good game about data, but they're not unleashing it the way he does. I just thought, like, to use two examples, yes, I'm very fortunate to be in rooms and to be surrounded or to work with what I call the best. There's a full circle moment that you don't need to look far to look at world class. We have two literally in our backyard that are playing at the highest level and winning.
Yeah. It's so crazy. And I have another example of world class is another friend of mine, Jean Hébert.
Yeah, perfect. He refed the game. I was at the Sens game the other night. He was our referee.
Yeah, he had 2 games here in Ottawa this weekend. He's from Bouctouche, which is just 30 minutes away from here. And he refed the final game of the Four Nations.
Crazy.
Would have been at the Olympics this year, had a brand new child, so couldn't get there, or maybe not, but whatever. Let's just say he definitely would have been in the mix to be there had he not had a brand new addition to his family. But he's world class. He would be definitely in the top 5, if not some of the top 2 right now. NHL referees, where there's only 36 or 38 NHL referees. Like, that's amazing. There's a lot of people. And even as a player, there's 25, 26 players on a given team. There's 32 teams or whatever, how many teams there are in the NHL. and there's the AHL. To be one of 36 of,
Unbelievable.
it's unbelievable. And to do it at the level and competence that he's doing it, he'll be on the podcast soon, same as Louis Melanson. So those are two of them that I've talked to that are going to
David
join
should
me.
have on at 1.2. He always comes back. By the way, he bought a place, so
Okay, I don't know him, so
we'll
you'll
make
have
that
to
happen.
connect me.
People
And
love David.
yeah,
He's a student
yeah,
of the game. He's proud New Brunswicker. But you know what's interesting? So think about, we just mentioned, and by the way, I hate to single out people because there's 1,000 others we could use the names in New Brunswick.
yeah. No, definitely.
But let's just think of these three people. So 100% they demonstrate all the things we said. And there's one thing that's, I think, the magic sauce of New Brunswickers. They're easy to be around. So
Yeah.
Jean LeBlanc made it easy for people to cheer for him every step of the way. David Alexander, I brought him to a few of my clients in Missouri after they all best friends with him. They can't get enough of him. Louis, I was just in Phoenix with Louis. He is running that range in Golf Canada like he's Mayor Quimby from The Simpsons. An old reference for my maybe older friends here. But those guys and girls are very easy to cheer for. So not only are they world-class in what they do, because here's what we also know. You can be world-class at your craft, but if you're difficult to be around, people will find a way for you not to be part of the mix. Don't kid yourself at one point, whether it's in business, in sports, in arts, whatever it might be.
So true.
So why don't we finish here? Why don't I finish? I ask you one last question. So you asked me a question. There you go. So you had a game plan. Obviously, you wanted to talk to me for a reason, and I was so excited to make this conversation happen. Is there something else on your mind that we didn't cover today? Is there something that, you have your list, or that you thought, hey, whether it's to ask me for a point of view or give me a point of view? Because I would argue that that's what I like about these conversations. I might be your guest, but I'm getting more from you than you're probably getting from me. And hopefully the listeners, if they were here, it would be the exact same. We would learn from them, no different than they're hopefully learning from us today.
I will say that exactly what I had on my agenda, and the reason to have you on was having somebody from here that's away doing their thing. It's kind of the same why I want Jean LeBlanc on, or Louis Melanson, or Dave, or whoever the case may be, because they all have their heart still here. By anyone listening and anybody from here that has an idea and has goals, that you can achieve them and you can push them through. Honestly, I think I got a lot more than my list today. I exactly what I thought this conversation would be. The ones that we had, whether it be in 2006 when we went to see the Stanley Cup finals in Edmonton, or I still, one of my fondest memories I have with my brother Marcel, who's a huge Oilers fan, massive Oilers fan, and Denny also, having the three of us, and with you joining.
Well, I'm
joining
like a pseudo family member. I carry the last name, and so I'm kind of like the fourth brother. How about that? So there you go.
So having those conversations are exactly what I had the intent of having today. There's nothing really I would like to to add. I think we've touched. The only thing I will say, and invite you to come back soon and have a golf game at Fox Creek very soon, and maybe even have a second kind of more, because that's one of the things I want to do this summer, is have more of the on-course podcasts, which is just a mic playing golf, and just like,
very cool idea.
So that's one of the things I'm going to do this year. We're going to do one a week, and we're going to have so maybe we'll do more on that front. Maybe have my brothers and just have more of a genuine.
Well, I can tell you this: if you want to bring the messy middle to life on the golf course, there will be messiness out there on the golf course. So there you go. Well, Mike, I'd like to first of all to thank you for doing this. I think it's great. It's a great medium, whether it's kids that you've coached, whether it's clients, whether it's future clients, whether it's just people looking for entertainment while they're in the car. And so thank you for that. I'd like to also apologize in a fun way to our listeners that I get very passionate about what I love. So I apologize if I was maybe a lot in different places, but I think that's also the nice thing, is not too structured. I'm going to do a shameless plug here, because I mentioned my book, Confidence of Choice. I'm going to be in Moncton at the end of September. Mark Black, there's another amazing world-class individual from the region.
Love Mark.
He has his Level Up conference that he has every year. It's his 10th anniversary, and I'm going to be speaking at it this year. So I'm going to come and I'm going to launch my book. I'm going to have a book tour one in Ottawa, one in New York, and one in Moncton. So maybe if this resonates for people, maybe it's I don't know, an extra motivation. We could
Awesome.
all meet each other there. And Mike, I can't wait because you're going to be front row. You better be there for this.
I've known Mark for years. I've seen him at the gym, and with everything that he's doing, it's very inspirational. And Mark is doing a fantastic job, and definitely another one that had a messy middle for sure. And
But think about world class, like what he's done as a
yeah,
runner, right? I think he's the only person in the world. I've had him in front of a bunch of our clients, and we're talking like global world class. They love his story. They love his humility. Another great export from New Brunswick. And we, go on and on.
we could go on and
Uh,
on and on.
but un gros
Yeah, no, I
merci,
appreciate.
Mike. Gros merci.
Merci à toi, Julien. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate the invite. I know we had a bit of a hard time connecting over the last several days, and even maybe some of the technology this morning again. But it was definitely, as we said before, it's going to be worth the wait, worth the time. I appreciate you very much as a human, but also as a friend. Keep up the good work.
The kids do. What's the heart emoji thing or whatever?
Yeah.
My listeners, it's like I'm trying. My daughter would say, "Stop with your dad jokes. It's just bad, Bob. You're just bad."
Bad vibe, bad
Bad
vibe.
vibe. But anyway, all that to say, really grateful to all our listeners. Obviously, if we've had more than one, great. And if we
Great.
have one,
Yeah.
hopefully we had impact on you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. And thanks for everyone to listen. You can always see us at encoreproperties.ca or all the other podcast apps. And we'll definitely tag Julien's podcast and all the other great things he's working on. Appreciate your time. And till next time, thank you.
Go get him, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks, Jules.